Chairman Nicholas, could you come to the front of the room, please? The House will please come to order. If I could get everybody to start to be quiet, we will commence. Thank you. So we are still in second reading. And so the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 134.
House Bill 134, sponsored by Representative Lawley. Property Tax Deferral Program Amendments.
We have an amendment. Representative Yin.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I respectfully withdraw second reading amendment number 1.
Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 134 has been withdrawn. House Bill 134 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 203, and we have amendments.
House Bill 203, sponsored by Representative Harshman. Property Tax Reduction and Replacement Act.
The first amendment is second reading amendment number 1. Representative Yin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 203 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, this bill represents one of possibly the biggest changes to our tax system that we could possibly contemplate in a long time. And with that, I do think that it is very important that we just make sure that we're doing the right thing. I don't want to be too much of a broken record, so I'll leave it at that. But again, this is a huge change, and I just want to make sure that in 3 years in a general session, we can come back and make sure we did everything correctly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else for their first time? Okay, sensing your urge to vote, all those in favor of second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 203 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 203 has been adopted. The next amendment for our consideration is second reading amendment number 2, Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 203 to ask your favorable consideration, or even just your consideration and some discussion would be kind of fun. What this does, ladies and gentlemen, is instead of a 2-cent sales tax increase to offset up to $1 million of property, went back and said, what would just 1 cent do? So if we up the state sales tax 1 cent, it would be roughly $200,000 across the board for all homeowners. And so you would mitigate some of those situations about special districts and the $1 million threshold of no one paying property tax. This would be a nice, I don't know, the average home I think in Wyoming when you include Teton County is about $385, $390 right now. So this would be significant relief on property tax while crossing it over to the sales tax. Again, what 15 to 18% we believe the sales tax is paid for by out-of-staters. And so I do think this would go a ways, perhaps not as far as a good bringer of the bill would like us to go on this shift, but I think it's a good intermediate step, to consider, what could we do to help everybody out with their increasing property taxes. And I think it is a good idea overall as we spend more time and energy to move towards this type of scenario. I just thought 2 cents for the million was too high. And so this might be the Goldilocks version of 1 cent, $200,000 roughly off the top. Everybody gets some, well, I would call it relief, although you're paying for it in a little bit in the other pocket. But I thought that would be a better step to go as a legislature than the full 2 cents and no more property tax for 97% of the state. Would ask for your favorable thoughts.
Representative Hornock for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to divide this amendment. The
How would you
first,
like to do that?
the first division is line 11 through 23, and the second division is line 1 through 10.
I'm going to grab the bill, check it out, and then I'll let you know. Representative Hornock, I would rule that is divisible. And so what, would you like to start with Division 1 or Division 2?
Division 1, Mr. Speaker, lines 11 through 23.
Okay, so Division 1 is lines 11 through 23. Representative Hornock, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I urge the body to vote in favor of this portion of it. This will take the increase in sales tax from what is in the bill now of upping it 2% or 2 pennies and just cutting that in half to 1%. So I urge the body to vote in favor of this. I'd stand for any questions.
Chairman Harshman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just, question for the good bringer then, and I know got this divided, but I think we got to be really careful. This could work against us in really two different ways. I mean, so if we adopt this deal and cut the tax and then say no on the exemption, then who's going to pay for the other $250 million in exemptions? I mean, I think you got to ask yourself that. It's going to go on your local government across the state, special districts, everybody, okay? And then the flip side is if, you know, we don't adopt this one and then we somehow cut the exemption, how's that going to work? And so I think this could go bad in two different ways. I think this amendment either goes together or doesn't go at all. And so, you know, I guess if you're going to vote it up or vote it down, but stay consistent, and we either approve them both or approve neither. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else for your first time? Anybody for your second time before the sponsor? Representative Hornock on Division 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to urge the body to vote in favor of this. And this is a tax increase. One way goes further than the other way. If you vote against this amendment, you're voting for a bigger increase in taxes. That being the case, according to Rule 12-4, I'd like to call for the ayes and noes.
Have the seconds. All righty. Okay, so all those in favor of Division 1 of second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 203, the chief clerk will, the chief clerk will call a roll when she gets her loaded. So just to repeat what we're voting on, so Division 1 is in your second reading amendment number 2, Division 1 is lines 11 through 23. 11 through 23. Which cuts the tax from basically from 2 cents to 1 cent. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Prego? Davis? Eklund? Harrelton? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? 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 Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stiff? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Strock, no to aye. Allemand, no to aye. Henderson, aye to no. Further changes? Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 46 aye, 15 no, 1 excused.
Division 1 to second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 203 has been adopted. We are now on Division 2, Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I urge the body to vote no on this portion of the amendment. And I know that what we've been looking at here, this takes some thought. So by voting against this amendment, it will keep the exempt portion of property taxes for residential homes at the $1 million level. My county here may be a little bit different than some of yours, but in our audited financial statement in my county for last year, the revenue from property taxes was roughly a little over $32 million. The amount of money that they spent in handling local government was roughly, in the $80 million mark. But the revenue, total revenue, was $32 million above the revenue that they brought in. So in my county, they could have done without either sales tax or property tax and still broke even. That may be a little bit different in some of your counties, but in this county, that was what happened. So I do urge the body, as we are looking at an increase in sales tax, I think our government can probably handle some things and probably tighten their belt enough to figure some of this stuff out. I would urge the body to vote no on this division and maintain what's in the bill of the $1 million exception for property, for residential property value. Thank you.
Representative Stith for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, just a question for the representative from District 42. It sounds like what you're trying to, the effect of this would be to create about a $250 million hole in the budget annually every year going forward. So I guess my question is, what's your plan for that? I mean, do you just want to, 70% of that goes to schools, right? So we're not going to be able to backfill. And yeah, what's your plan for that? Thank you.
Chairman Zwanitzer for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, according to our data book, it's 224 million this year, 230 next year, and 237 million in 2 years. But I guess I would echo those sentiments. And so certainly not how I saw my amendment going, but I would implore you to vote aye. So at least we don't have a $230 million hit to all of your counties by voting no and requiring a very interesting third reading amendment. So at least for now, I would encourage your aye vote on the amendment, and I'm really glad we have one more reading to figure out how this is going to work. But by voting no on this amendment after voting yes, you've just created a $240 million hole with no way to get out of that I've heard that we'll have to figure out by third reading. So at least vote aye.
Representative Pendergraft for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From where I sit, if we create this $230 million deficit, there's a couple ways that we could do it. We could try to find taxation from somewhere else, or maybe we could just not spend so much, find something else not to spend the money on.
Representative Larson Lloyd for your first time.
Thank you. So to the presenter, if I heard him correctly, he noted the financial standing of his county and acknowledged that probably hadn't researched what other counties were, and then suggested that probably there was room, and which would maybe suggest to me that the data really isn't as concrete as we would like to have when we make this type of a decision. But if he's got further information on what other counties would do, that would be helpful for me.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Ward is heading to the mic. Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe that some folks in this room voted for several amendments that would have reduced spending in the budget by about that much. So I urge a no vote on this amendment.
Anybody else for their first time? All right, anybody for their second time before the sponsor of the division? Representative Larson Lloyd for your second time.
Mr. Chairman, just because of the impact we'll have on schools and counties due to Rule 12-4, I'd call for the ayes and nays.
Are there any seconds for that rule? Well, that seems to be universal. All right. The chief clerk was just worried she wasn't going to be able to take roll call on this one. So, anybody else before the sponsor for their first time, second time? Representative Pendergraft for your second time.
Thank you. I'll be brief. We do need to support the local governments, the counties, the districts. That's the essential purposes of government. Let's do that. And then let's find something that maybe isn't quite so essential and just take a step back.
Anybody else for their second time? Representative Hornock, bring us home.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I urge a no vote on this division. We are still increasing sales tax by 1 cent, which does bring in a lot of revenue still. So again, I urge a no vote. Thank you.
On Division 2, second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 203, Chief Clerk, please call the roll when you got her loaded.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrop? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stiff? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanzer Dan? Zwanzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Singh, aye. To no? Further changes? Further changes. Closing vote? Vote closed. 34 aye, 27 no, 1 excused.
Division 2 for second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 203 has failed. Oh, it's passed, excuse me, passed. Adopted. All right, now we're at second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 203.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Wiley, you got a
Pursuant-
privilege?
pursuant to House Rules 10-3B, I would like to make a motion to table House Bill 203 indefinitely.
Okay, I need my rule book. 10-3.
Mr. Speaker, 10-3B.
Representative Wiley, are you still near a mic? So go to a mic. So the question is, I just want to make sure of what your motion was. Was your motion to postpone indefinitely, or was your motion to lay on the table?
Table indefinitely.
I'm not sure what that motion is in our
Mr.
rules.
Speaker, postpone indefinitely.
Okay, all right. We're gonna get some more counseling, but it appears that's probably gonna be in order. It is a debatable motion. So Representative Wiley, you got to decide what you want to do. He did, but he can pull it if he wants to. He can pull it. Representative Wiley. Do you want to continue with this motion or not?
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw the motion.
Okay, motion has been withdrawn. Well, that's always fun. It's a little fresh review of the rules. All right, we're back on second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 203. That's time out of our lives that will never be replaced. Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'll move second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 203 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, what this amendment does is lay the effective date of this tax change back 1 year. I think this is a monumental tax change, and it definitely needs to be studied and have corrections to it. And I'll probably be against the bill, and I definitely will be against the bill when it comes for vote on third reading. But I feel that this will at least give us a cushion if it does pass.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Alaman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. People in my district don't have a year. They are losing their homes now. They're not going to lose them next year. They're losing them now. We don't have a year. Thank you.
Chairman Harshman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Kind of looking at the big picture of tax relief. You know, we passed what we call a reform bill with a cap out of here. We adopted on second reading 100,000 exemption now for next year in House bill, in a previous House bill. I don't think I'd say the number, but so that's going to go into effect. We're going to see that bill on third reading. I'm just sitting here thinking, I mean, if you wanted to delay this a year, we're going to have that cap bill go out, but we've got a relief bill going next year at 100,000, and maybe this bill's going to be relief at 200,000 next year, and then $1 million the year after that. So, you know, vote your conscience. I think we've got ways to kind of work this and get similar relief. I mean, part of the criticism, I think the fear of making change is, you know, breaking the status quo and doing those things, but you know, it would give us a year to study it. This doesn't kill a bill. It just says, you know, if we decide to pass a bill on third reading, it just wouldn't take effect. So I think it's an interesting thought. We can probably have both. We can have a little relief and then keep this reform going. I think, Mr. Speaker, though, I think you're all well aware. I've been through a lot of interim committees, and some of you saw your first interim work go down in flames in the first day. I mean, you don't make laws in the interim. And again, 20 of us probably won't be back next year if averages hold. Be a lot of new faces. So I just want us to keep this momentum moving forward and kind of just take a look around and see how we can fix this problem and not kick it down the road. And I think our people deserve that. So, you know, I'm going to sit in my chair and settle. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote on this. But I think if this passes, I don't think it's a horrible thing. I think we can keep working and fix it and massage it all together to make it work. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the bringer? Does the bringer want to say any last word on it? Nope. So all those in favor of second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 203 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Second reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 203 has been adopted. The next amendment for our consideration is second reading amendment number 4. Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 203. And basically, this is a pretty simple amendment. All it really does is it adds into, on page 3, line 9, it just adds into the definition of where it talks about the dwelling, it adds and other structures associated with the residential structure, which includes garages, sheds, and outbuildings. So as all this does is adds some of the outbuildings to this exemption. So not too complicated. I ask for your favorable consideration of this amendment.
Chairman Harshman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a question for the bringer, that how much does this cost? I mean, this doesn't come free, and I'm kind of asking a leading question, but I'd like you to tell the body if, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the sponsor, Chairman Harshman?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I guess my thing, I know, I should say, this is going to cost $50 million. This was in my first versions of the bill. And then you're trying to keep this tax rate as low as possible to provide the maximum benefit. And frankly, you know, I live out where everybody has outbuildings. And I drove around, and then you drive through town, and think about your own neighborhood now. How many, and we're talking, they got to be a substantial outbuilding, not a little shed. And then this thing came to me, well, yeah, he's already paid sales tax and he built that thing, but this, you go in town and nobody in town has one, and should they pay a little more sales tax to subsidize that guy? And so it takes about 0.21 pennies to pay for this, right? 1/5 of a penny to pay for outbuildings around the state. The other little problem with it, many of these outbuildings, as you know, are commercial. Folks have a residence and then they've got an outbuilding right behind the place. It's not just their place where they're working on an old car, they actually got a business in there. And so it gets a little more complicated. And I appreciate the bringer bringing this, but I would say this too. Attached garages are included, right? That's part of that residential structure. So, okay, thank you. And I'm going to vote no on this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that discussion. I know that it does add some additional in there, and I think with some of the adjustments we just made in a recent amendment, I believe that basically should be covered inside of that, because I know we adjusted from doing that $1 million, we adjusted down that penny, and from doing that $1 million, we adjusted it down to $200,000. Based on that, I would think this would be included in that, and I ask for your favorable consideration for this amendment.
All right, all those in favor of second reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 203 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 203 has failed. The next amendment for our consideration is second reading amendment number 5, Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 5 to House Bill 203 and ask for your favorable consideration. This bill is very interesting because it deals with a trade-off, as you well know, property taxes for sales tax, but the trade-off is not just in sales tax, and I want everybody to be aware of this. The trade-off is in sales tax, in use tax, and in excise tax. And so this amendment actually deletes the excise tax portion of this bill. And let me explain the excise tax just briefly. The way it works is that probably within your county, you've dealt with this. Per state statute, the county, along with coordination with cities within the county, can impose an additional special tax. It's anywhere from 0.5% to 2%. And so they go through, and my county here, they right now currently have an additional 2% tax going on. so that they can pay for additional needs, repairs, structures, whatever it is. So that's an interesting thing that an interesting way they can use the excise tax to actually get projects completed that they would like to. In order to do that, you have to go before the voters, and the voters approve these excess tax measures, which is a very good way to do it, there's nothing wrong with that. However, just a little story here in this county. When I first moved to this county some 18 years ago, I moved here as a superintendent over some apartment complexes, and walk into the building permit office, and they had this beautiful display that they wanted to build a rec center here. That rec center, for some reason, and I don't know why, but for some reason, the voters in this county keep refusing year after year that rec center. It's almost comical, and I'm not sure why. I'm not in favor of it, against it, whatever, it doesn't matter.
What's your point? Okay. Are you, maybe tighten it up a bit?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So that project goes before the voters, and the voters vote whether or not to fund that project. So far, that particular project hasn't yet been funded. Other projects have, but that's the excise portion of this. This bill does something that I don't think we want to do when it comes to that excise special use tax. If the voters within the county choose not to pass, in the county, in the city, if the voters choose not to pass these special projects, then it separates now the cities and the counties. And if a municipality within that county wants to continue one of these excise taxes, they are allowed to do that. When the city council gets together, they can vote on it. If the county wants to continue this excise tax, they can get together within the county commission and they can vote on that to continue this excise tax. It actually takes it away from the voters. And I think that's very dangerous to do. And I don't think we want to give that ability, because right now, there's kind of a checks and balance to it. Your county, as well as 50% of the municipalities within that county, have to agree to continue these excise taxes.
Representative Hornock, let's wrap this up a little bit.
You're going to separate that out, okay? You're going to separate that. And then by resolution only, either the county commissioners or the city council can make that excise tax permanent. So what we're going to do in this bill, potentially, is not increase sales tax 1% or 2%, wherever we land after third reading. There's a potential to increase a permanent sales tax and double it with the excise tax. And I don't think that portion of the bill is a good way to do things. This will strip that out of the bill. It will strip the excise tax portion so that it stays as is right now within the counties for the excise tax. I urge an aye vote on this amendment. Thank you.
All right, Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think there is some confusion. There are two types of taxes called sales and use, 3915, 3916. They are identical, right? They just run together in statute, and every bill has 3915 and 3916 if they're dealing with sales and use tax is what we call that. Don't know about the excise tax. I haven't heard that's not in these statutes, but the question before you, what this bill, talking about the local pennies is what this is referring to now. The local pennies right now go to a countywide vote. We all know that. Fifth penny, optional tourist, whatever. They can currently be made permanent by a resolution of the majority of the governing bodies in the county. Great. Nobody really does that. A few counties do. Most go back to the people. There's one little change in this bill on page 7 on the sales tax part and page 11 on the use tax that allows a vote of the people by individual municipalities. Park County is a great example. Say Powell wants it, Cody doesn't. Well, Powell can have their own election and the people of Powell, if they want to raise the tax on their sale. But nowhere in there can individual municipalities by resolution keep the tax away from the voters. That was taken out in the standing committee amendment. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please vote no on this amendment and end this confusion. Thank you.
Representative Storer, for your first time. Nope. All right. Anybody else? Representative Hornock, are you good, or you want another bite at the apple?
Yeah, just by,
Representative Hornock.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to close out, this bill could separate that so that municipalities on their own could increase these special taxes and make them permanent. And most of us understand where the box stores are. They're not in the counties, they're in the cities. So basically, we're still increasing the tax in all of the county for everybody that everybody would have to pay. So I don't think it's a good part of what we're trying to do overall with this bill. I urge an aye vote on this amendment. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of second reading amendment number 5 to House Bill 203 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 5 to House Bill 203 has failed. The next amendment for our consideration is second reading amendment number 6, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respectfully withdraw amendment, or second reading amendment number 6.
Awesome, gold star there. Second reading amendment number 6 has been withdrawn. Now Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do move second reading amendment number 7 to House Bill 203. And one of the issues associated with this bill is just the fact that the bill currently has an escalator for the top number, which now with some of the amendments, I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work, that being said, but with that escalator. But one of the things that I think needs to make sure that this is put into a box is if assessments continue to escalate at an extreme amount, I think that's a problem. So one of the things that I've been kind of trying to propose, and it was all this amendment really does, it just inserts basically some, I would call it clarifying text that may not be in full agreement with that, but basically clarifying text, because this just demands that in this process, that in the rules that are promulgated to support this, it utilizes a definition of fair market value as defined in our statute, and it's very specific to the exclusion of a system using replacement value, because I don't believe replacement value is appropriate for our fair market value. So I've put this in there. I wanted to put this out for a vote. I asked for your favorable consideration for this amendment, but I think this is really just designed to, for lack of a better term, put a little bit better boundaries specifically on how the property assessment is done here. Again, ask for your favorable consideration on the amendment.
Representative Craigo for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd urge a no vote on the amendment. It will completely upend how our tax system works right now. It will require an entire rebuild of the tax system our assessors use, which will cost lots and lots of money. So I'd ask for a no vote.
Anybody else for your first time? Anybody for your second time before the sponsor, Representative Locke? For your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ask for your favorable consideration.
All those in favor of second reading amendment number 7 to House Bill 203 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 7 to House Bill 203 has failed. The next amendment for our consideration is second reading amendment number 8, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 8 to House Bill 203 and ask for your favorable consideration. This amendment deletes Division 2 from Amendment 2 and returns the property tax exemption back to $1 million. And it deletes the Amendment 3 1-year delay. And further, it says that the $1 million exemption shall not be reduced until on or after July 1st, 2034, so 10 years. Ask for your aye vote.
Just a note that this is the corrected copy, so if anybody's looking, I believe, right? 208, Representative Ward, this is corrected copy.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the corrected copy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for their first time? Representative Yin for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, I don't quite have the corrected copy yet in front of me, but I think the idea of binding a future legislature is not a really good one. To say that it's the intent of the legislature that no future legislator can't do something is a really, really bad idea. I mean, we're basically saying that, you know what, voters in the future, you don't really get a say when you put someone in the legislature because we said we want to do this until this amount of time. So I would urge you to vote no on the amendment. Let's not put in language that says other legislatures shouldn't touch this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else for your first time? Second time, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we all know, when the legislature convenes, they can decide to delete anything that's in statute at that time. Thank you.
All right. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 8 to House Bill 203 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 8 to House Bill 203 has failed. The next amendment for our consideration is second reading amendment number 9, Representative Allemand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do move second reading of Amendment 9 to Bill 203 and ask for your favorable consideration. Folks, I'm going to talk about one of our legacy industries, agriculture. The guys who work every day, herding cows, putting up hay, growing barley for our beer, that's pretty important. But what I'm going to ask is that we put an amendment that their land is also exempt, 100% exemption for agriculture land. Thank you.
Representative Conrad, for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, let me speak on behalf of the other industry, which is minerals. If we're going to go pursue exemptions here, which these buildings were constructed based on the severance taxes that are required, and more importantly, the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund, let's consider that exemption as well.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Harshman.
Mr. Speaker, quickly on Amendment 9, and if you look, the next amendment actually pays for it and gives you an amount that it costs. You can get an idea for that. This one, hey, and I've ran this in versions of this bill too, Mr. Speaker, and I'm not opposed to it at all. I just want us to pay for it. That's all I'm trying to do, the Wyoming way, to pay for our stuff that we want. So, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else for the first time, second time, sponsor?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the good representative from the Trona Mines, this is next year. That's what I want to do next year. And then I want to get rid of all property taxes everywhere because they are immoral. This is our first step. Next year is our second step. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of second reading amendment number 9 to House Bill 203 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 9 to House Bill 203 has failed. Division being called. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 9, please stand. All right, all of those opposed, please stand. All right, please sit down. Second reading amendment number 9 to House Bill 203 has failed 23 to 37. The next amendment for our consideration is second reading amendment number 10, Representative Allemand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, that one didn't work, so let's go a little further, folks. I am now willing to make agriculture pay their way.
Please move that amendment, Mr. Representative Allemand. Please move the amendment. I thought I did. I didn't hear it anyway.
I'm sorry. I do move second reading of Amendment 10 to Bill 203 and ask for your favorable consideration. And as you once heard, last time we did not take care of one of our first industries. So let's make them pay their way. So what we're going to do now is up our sales tax 0.15%. They only absorb, or they only are paying 0.12% now. So let's up it to 15 and let's make them pay. So I asked for a favorable consideration of this, and all of a sudden, we're making agriculture pay more than they are today. Thank you.
Just a note, this is the corrected copy. So if you're looking at just make sure you're looking at the right one. I would assume. Okay, anybody else for their first time? Representative Harshman.
Mr. Speaker, in fair debate on this amendment, I think the good bringers of numbers are right there. I think our ag lands, property tax, of course, in our Constitution is on the value to produce. And so your assessors are out there looking, is it irrigated? Is it dry land? What kind of is being used? I'm looking to the farmers in the room. I'm getting some head nods. And so I think assessors have a pretty difficult job with the landowner. And so, and it's 30 million a year that our ag land across the state produces, is my understanding, in in ad valorem taxes. So, you know, I think this is a good amendment and a fair amendment, a way to do it. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else for their first time?
Question?
Anybody for their second time before the sponsor? Question being called by the sponsor. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 10 to House Bill 203 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The chair is in doubt. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 10, please rise. I think we lost our voice on that one. 12. All right, all those opposed, please stand. More than 12. Second reading amendment number 10 to House Bill 203 has failed. The next amendment for our consideration is second reading amendment number 11, the corrected copy. So Representative Allemand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Boy, it's 2 for 2, and it's not in my favor. Okay.
So you got to move that again. Move that
Oh,
amendment.
I'm sorry. I do move second reading of Amendment 11 to Bill 203, and that's for your favorable consideration. Okay, this time, folks, we're going to get a little more serious. We're going to put a $10 million cap on this. So these rich ranchers aren't getting away with it. And we are, wow, I wish I had my glasses. We have upped the percentage a little also. So please look at this. We've got to give agriculture a little bit of knowledge to where they're going in the future. Right now, they do not know, and we need something for them. Please vote aye on this bill. Thank you, or on this amendment. Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Cinching your urge to vote. Question having been called. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 11 to House Bill 203 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 11 to House Bill 203 has failed. The next amendment for our consideration is second reading amendment number 12. Representative Allemand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do move amendment, I think it's 11? 12, okay. My glasses are up my desk. Reading of this amendment.
So you're going to move second reading amendment number 12, please.
Yes, I move second reading of amendment number 12 to Bill 203 and ask for your favorable consideration. Maybe you guys can get along with me on this one because we're not talking about agriculture anymore. What we're going to talk about is how long you're in the state. If you have to live in the state for 6 months a year to qualify for any of these tax rebates. Thank you.
All right, does anybody want to, Representative Newsom.
Just a bringer for the, question for the bringer of the amendment. Who determines that and how is it determined? Thank you.
Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, and members, this also was a consideration in bill drafting, but you have to fill out some kind of application or an affidavit you have to sign, like all these programs. And I'm not opposed to this. I know where he's going with this, and maybe we can collectively, in the third reading, think of a way. We're wanting this for Wyoming people. And I know exactly, but just so if you vote, we're going to probably have to figure out a way to sign up for it, which might not be too onerous. So that's the answer, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the sponsors? Sponsor, you want another shot or are you good?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, we have to sign up for everything, and I disagree with that. We have to sign our kids into school. We have to sign our kids out of school. We have to sign up at the doctor. Everything we do is a sign up. One more sign up is not going to be a big problem. So this is looking at the people of Wyoming. It's not looking at the people of California and New York. This is trying to help the people of Wyoming And I think this would go a long ways in helping us. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of second reading amendment number 12 to House Bill 203 signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Second reading amendment number 12 to House Bill 203 has failed. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. Please stay standing. Up and down doesn't work. All right, 34. All those opposed, please stand. That would be less than 34. I just thought you might need to get up. So second reading amendment number 12 to House Bill 203 has been adopted. Well, we're in the middle of a bill. Yeah. You know, we all want to introduce him. Representative Stipp, second reading amendment number 12.
I believe it's 13.
13, thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully withdraw second reading amendment number 13 to House Bill 203.
All right, second reading amendment number 13 to House Bill 203 has been withdrawn. House Bill 203, excuse me, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Now, Chairman Harshman is going to do the honors of announcing.
Members of the floor, Mr. Speaker?
Please.
Okay, members, if you would stand and stretch and look to the west. And up in the gallery, we have a former esteemed member from the great town of Green River. Now, he's, Mr. Representative Blake is from Green River, of course, and was, had an ex officio duty. He was the leader of the house choir, him and Representative Flintner, and I'll never forget the beautiful songs we sang in here when we opened this building up, and a lot of great memories. So maybe later he can come down and give us some remarks on the floor. So welcome back, and lead us in Cowboy Joe. Welcome back. Thank you.
Representative Blake, it's very good to see you. I know you've had a little health difficulty this year. It's great to see you out and about. Awesome, what a good guy. And are there any more privileges before we move into the next phase of where we're at? Nope. All right. I think, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we might have, they got amendments on everything? All right. Okay, we are at that order of business on bills on third reading and final passage. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 104. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 104, sponsored by Water, Omnibus Water Bill Planning, an act relating to water development projects being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to move third reading amendment to number 1 to House Bill 104 and ask for your favorable consideration. We've already kind of debated the need in Goshen County for the 2 tunnel projects. The body recommended the omnibus spending bill. There was a little bit of misinformation as far as the projects already in the omnibus were the master plan project and a underground water for a small town. So it was not the 2 tunnels. So I just ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
All right, Representative Western for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate there's a legitimate need for this. This is a very worthy topic, but I was hoping that the sponsor of this amendment could clarify a little bit. I thought that we already allocated quite a bit of previous federal dollars, whether ARPA, CARES, et cetera, for this specific purpose. And I thought that there were ongoing and repeated offerings of those dollars made available, but were declined. So if they could bring some clarification, that would be great. Thank you.
Just a second. Quiet. Are you done? Right.
Mr. Speaker, I am.
I've got too many people talking in my ear right now. Representative Larson Lloyd for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the planning bill, and we see the allocation for the Goshen Tunnel in the construction bill, which is coming over from the other side. We appropriated those funds 2 years ago. I think the total appropriation or the total cost of that is projected to be around 80 million. We funded the state's portion, had a couple of options of doing that. As the good majority whip said, we could have used some ARPA dollars. That was declined, and we funded that with general fund dollars out of the water account, and that is probably the proper place to have this conversation, not in the planning bill.
Representative Conrad, are you up at the mic or? Okay, Representative Allemand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an $84 million project. Nebraska's paying for a lot of it. We need to pay $34 million for something that was built in 1917. 1917. They built things good, but it could only last a little over 100 years. So now we need to rebuild it and get it done now for the farmers of eastern Wyoming. And remember, Nebraska's paying the big share of this. Thank you.
Representative Western, could you come up here for a second so I can?
Speaker Summers for your first time.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Having served on the Water Committee this last go-around, we've actually, in the construction bill, we have the amount of money that, to authorize the expenditure of the money that exists. And this is going to add another pile of money to that. And one, I just don't think it belongs in this bill. And I would urge your defeat of this amendment.
Any other member for their first time? Any other member for their first time? Any member for their second time? Vice Chair Larson. Representative Allemand.
You know, it seems like we can spend hundreds of millions of dollars for the state of California to ensure that they have water. We seed our clouds here for the state of California, not for us, but for the state of California. However, we are not being allowed to give
Representative-
our people.
Representative Allemand on the amendment.
I am on the amendment, sir, because we need to give these Wyoming farmers this money. We give it to all these other states. So why are we saying that we cannot give it to our farmers when we give it to San Francisco? Thank you.
Vice Chair Larson, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In reviewing some of the Select Water Committee minutes where this funding, which we had approved 2 years ago and was authorized this session, there were no additional requests from the district or anyone else for funds. Again, it doesn't belong in this bill. If you were going to make an argument to that effect, it would be in the bill that we'll be hearing in the next couple of weeks. But to date, there hasn't been a request from the governing body of that district for additional funds.
To the sponsor, Representative Smith.
Thank you. I do know that this governing body has been requesting and petitioning the funds from different agencies, all the way from our nation's capital to different executive branch to this body as well. So I just know the longer we wait, the more money the project becomes. And so that's what I'm just trying to get ahead of, so they can break ground, get the project done and over with, and use the funding from our neighboring state before those funds expire in '26. So please vote aye.
All right, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 104 signify by saying aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 104 has failed. House Bill 104 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allemand?
Excused.
Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
Aye.
Allemand? Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote? Vote closed. 62 aye.
House Bill 104, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 104 has passed the House. Representative Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the body, it is my honor to introduce to you a friend and gentleman from where the mountains are grand and snowy in our North Gallery, Mr. Rob Wallace. Mr. hold your applause for a moment. There's some good biography here. Mr. Wallace formerly worked for Senator Wallop as well as Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer. Most recently, Mr. Wallace was the senior-most official from Wyoming in the Trump administration as he was appointed to and served as the Assistant Secretary of the Interior for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Mr. Wallace was born in Evanston, Wyoming, and a fun little side note, his mother served the people of Wyoming in this very house. Please welcome Mr. Rob Wallace.
Rob, welcome to the House. It's good to see you. Chairman Harshman, you're going to come take the chair for a minute. I may have to go use the facilities.
Representative Andrew. Okay, members, next bill for our consideration is House Bill 166. Reading clerk, please read the bill.
House Bill 166, sponsored by Representative Clouston. Education Savings Account 1, an act relating to education, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have amendments. Representative Andrew first. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pursuant to House Rule 12-9, I would like to call the previous question on the bill.
Going to need 3 seconds on that motion. Okay, we have stand still while the chief gets the 3. We have more than 3, obviously. Members, we're going to pause just for a minute, so I just want to check out 12-9 again and read that, make sure we're. Okay, members, the previous question, Rule 12-9, the previous question is demanded, and the object of the motion then is to bring the House to a vote on the pending question without further discussion. This will take a 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, when you're ready, please call the roll. Members, just while the chief is loading up the computer, if this motion is successful, if 2/3 of you vote aye on this, we will take the final vote on this motion. Okay, if this motion is unsuccessful, debate will continue as usual. We'll hear the amendments, et cetera, and continue on. Okay, now this is, the question has been demanded. The previous question, according to Rule 12-9 of the House, this will take 2/3. If a 2/3 vote is successful, we will go to the final question on this bill without any further debate or any further motions, for any further amendments. If the 2/3 is not reached, the action on the bill will continue as usual. So Chief Clerk, please call the roll on Rule 12-9, the previous question.
Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Clauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stiff. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanzer Dan. Zwanzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Chestick, aye to no. Berger, aye to no. Northrup, no to aye. Northrup? Larson Lloyd, aye to no. Sherwood, aye to no. Storer, aye to no. Further changes? Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 35 aye, 27 no.
So the motion for previous question has failed. So we're back on the bill. Third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 166 would be Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I bring you third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 166. As promised yesterday, this requires that ESA students receive instruction in the essentials of the United States Constitution and the Constitution of the State of Wyoming. And this verbiage comes directly from Statute 21-9-102, which requires the same thing from our public school students. And then as we go to page 21 on line 20, the same as our public schools, this will determine eligibility for ESA students. And I would like to have Rule 12-4 and have the ayes and noes on this particular amendment. Thank you.
All right. Ayes and noes takes 2 seconds. Looks like we got them.
Thank you.
Okay, Representative Washut for your first time.
Thank you. Question for the bringer. Similar language exists for public education, but without any penalty clause. Is there in fact a penalty for public education if they fail to teach to the standard of this language?
Representative Andrew for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The good previous speaker alluded to one of the issues with this is that it is kind of random. There is a place in here, it creates a place in here that just makes a cause for getting you kicked out of an ESA program in an instance where you wouldn't be for a public school. Additionally, there's no age requirement on it, and this bill applies to 4-year-old pre-K. And so with this amendment, you could kick a pre-K student out of their school because they can't recite a great amount of constitutional knowledge to you yet. Thank you.
Representative Stivar for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a question. Isn't it September 17th that all schools are supposed to teach the Constitution? Thank you.
Representative Alleman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is just a question. I'm wondering what it means when it says the willful failure of the parents of the ESA student to ensure ESA student receives the instruction under this subparagraph shall be, okay. I'm just wondering what all this means, because it kind of says to me that if you don't do what I say, I'm jerking your funds. Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Ward for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just wondering, how are we going to prove willful? And who's going to be the arbitrator of that? Or are people going to show up at your house if you're educating your children? Did you teach the Constitution today? I mean, how is this going to be implemented? Thank you.
Representative Brown for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just to answer the question about the discussion of whether or not there's a penalty for this, there is. 21.9.102 is instruction in the state and federal constitutions required satisfactory examination and prerequisite to graduation. And then 21.9.103 is penalty for failure to carry out requirements of Wyoming Statute 21.9.102. Willful failure on the part of any school or college administrator or instructor to carry out the requirements of Wyoming Statute 21.9.102 shall be sufficient cause for the removal of such person from his position. So this is not necessarily kicking the student out. This is saying the parent is not providing, or the individual that we are supplying state tax dollars to, we are ensuring that they are being taught the state and federal constitution, which I was part of the group that brought this forward back in 2017. So I don't see why we would have so much consternation over wanting to make sure that privately schooled individuals are taught the same things that our publicly school education is when it comes to the constitutions. So on and 4.
Representative Banks for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'm looking at the bill, and on page 9, I just want to have some clarification. It says already requires students receive instruction in civics. Just wondering if we should just leave it at that and not make it so specific. I think that the Constitution, at least where I came from, is taught under civics. If that's not the case, just clarification on that. Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Second time before the sponsor. Representative Alleman, are you making a run for the mic? You are. Representative Alleman.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I'm really getting at is the line that says instruction in the essentials of the United States Constitution and including the study of the devotion to American institution and ideals. What are those ideals? Are the American ideals, they're my ideas. They're your ideas, and they're somebody else's ideas. So how do we define ideas? Thank you.
All right, I think it's ideals with an L on the end, but Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have another question also on the line, along the lines of the last speaker, but it says including the study of American institution and ideals, but there's another part of it, and devotion to. Wouldn't it be against American ideals to require devotion to any specific set of ideals?
All right, anybody for their more for their second time? Representative Brown for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to point everybody yet again to 219102. I'll read it verbatim. All schools and colleges in this state that are supported in any manner by public funds shall give instruction in the essentials of the United States Constitution and the Constitution of the State of Wyoming, including the study and devotion to American institution and ideals, and no student shall receive a high school diploma, associate degree, or baccalaureate degree without satisfactorily passing an examination on the principles and the Constitution of the United States and the State of Wyoming. We have this in statute for our K through 12 students. This language that the bringer of this amendment brought forward is the same language that we have in current statute. We're just trying to make it all even.
Representative Ward for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to emphasize that parents are the primary stakeholders in their children's education. We don't even enforce this in public schools. One student's course at a particular university on the U.S. and Wyoming Constitution was a semester-long lecture on why white people are evil, and the final exam was an open book multiple choice test.
Representative Ward.
The final exam was an open book multiple choice test with an open computer. Thank you.
All right, anybody else for their second time? Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's be clear that we're not talking about any university students, that we're talking about K-12 education here. And our public school students are required to study our Constitution and the Wyoming law, and I think each and every student in Wyoming should be required to do that. And if they're taking state funds, I'm a homeschool parent, and I would not have taken these funds because I wanted to direct my child's education the way I wanted to direct it. If somebody wants to take these funds, I think it is not unreasonable for us to require that they study the Constitution of both the United States and of Wyoming. I think that's not an unreasonable ask. Thank you.
All right. Third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 166. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand, Allred, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Berger, Brown, Burkhart, Byron, Chadwick, Chestick, Clauston, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hornock, Jennings, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Locke, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Nemec, Northrop, Oakley, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Pendergraft, Penn, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Sherwood, Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stiff, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Zwanitzer Dan, Monitor Dave, Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Banks, no to aye. Penn, aye to no. Locke, no. Further changes? Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 52 aye, 10 no.
Third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 166 has been adopted. The next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 166. No. Oh, it said deleting the enacting clause. All right, we'll set that aside. Third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 166 is Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 66 and ask your indulgence and your support. What I'm doing is putting in some, and just some, of the reporting requirements that are due for K-12 education. I believe that if we're taking this money and giving it to people, that they ought to turn around and report back to us and tell us how they're using it. And some of those ways include special ed services, students with disabilities, and of course, how many are enrolled in public schools that are coming out of the public schools and moving into another kind of schooling, whether it's homeschooled or a private school or whatever you have you. Also certification of whomever's doing the instructing at that level. Also like to know about their graduation requirements, what their assessments requirements are, and health and safety and accreditation. So that pretty much covers it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Clouston for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you look at page 20 of this bill, some of the things that are required by the superintendent already are analysis of graduation rates, proficiency, and progress based on grade level. The results of this analysis under this paragraph shall be included in the annual report required pursuant to the statute. So already the superintendent has a list of things from this program that she's going to have to report to the Joint Education Committee. I find this current amendment a little bit maybe too prescriptive. The superintendent's going to work on this program. She's going to bring us a lot of information. And from that information that she gathers, we can look at what's important and bring that back to the committee and to this body. Please vote no on this amendment.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the sponsor? Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just reading through this amendment, are we, so I would imagine, you know, as a question, then there is going to be all of this information in a questionnaire then that goes out to every ESA student that the parent then needs to fill out, and they're going to have to fill out questions dealing with you know, individuals with disabilities, codes of conduct, dress code, discriminatory policies such as religious affiliation, and requirements and lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, and queer policies that may exclude students. We're getting pretty far in the weeds here when, you know, I don't even know if these kind of questions are something that we ask teachers in our public school, what their stance is on these things and how they go ahead and educate our children in public school. So to do this for the ESA side, you know, I really don't think this makes sense. I think, you know, I would urge a no vote on this. This kind of goes a little far. Thanks.
Representative Rachel Rodriguez, or Rodriguez Williams, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and opposed to the amendment, the sponsor mentioned that several different reasons in this amendment why there should be some sort of compliance if we're going to give parents this money. And the reality is the government has no money. It's the people's money. I have several questions regarding this amendment for the bringer of the amendment. Number one, why should this body codify that religious affiliation is discriminatory? Number two, do we currently track public school students after they graduate to see what college attendance and career choices look like? Number three, why is there a requirement to track health and safety incidents? What does that entail? Four, why does it matter to the bringer of the amendment what my kid wears?
Anybody else for their first time?
I've got a few more, if I can
okay.
continue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to know from the sponsor of the amendment what parent or why a parent would want their child's information collected and published. On and against.
Anybody else for their first time? Second time before the sponsor? Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, we're talking about transparency in taxpayers' money. It's our money. We should have a chance to find out where it's going. I didn't get the first one. I'm sorry. I was not writing fast enough. So after graduation, why do we track what happens after graduation? We want to know what we're doing with the education of these kids. Are they going into college? Are they going into trade schools? Are they going into work? We need to know what kind of job that educational institution did. Health and safety. Why do we track health and safety? If you have a school that has a lot of injuries showing up, there may be another issue showing up there. School dress. Do they require a dress code? That's all we're asking. Is there a required dress code? Do you have a uniform that you have to wear? And last of all, the child's personal information. I don't think anybody wants to know too much about the personal information, but we're just looking for numbers. It's just the numbers required to be able to put together a report, to be able to see how people are doing with taxpayers' money.
All right.
Please vote aye.
All those in favor of third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 166 signify by saying aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 166 has failed. Next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 4. Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 66 and give you an easy one because like the shall, this is a who's, except for this who's a different who. I stand. Thank you.
All those in favor of third reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 166 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Third reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 166 has been adopted. The next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 5. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move third reading amendment number 5 to House Bill 166 and ask for your favorable consideration, ladies and gentlemen. So when you read the current draft of the bill, there's no mechanism to review and determine whether or not these folks who are not receiving regular educational services from the public side, if the funds that we provide are being used in a way that they're actually properly advancing in terms of sufficient testing and matching their grades. Because if there are kids who are falling behind year after year, frankly, we need to pull them out of the program and get them back in school to see if we can't get them up to a level commensurate with their grade levels. There's no provision in this current bill that monitors it, that has any mechanism to say, wait a minute. If if the parent is using that money inappropriately, or if the instruction that child is receiving, if he's not advancing, and so we're losing year after year, we need to have a mechanism by which we say, okay, here's the money, here's how you're being taught. Let's make sure that these kids are advancing in the appropriate mechanism. So, and this is kind of crafted in a way that just says that the ACA students will perform substantially, who performs substantially below grade levels or fails, then the superintendent will go in and monitor that child, make sure, and then create a program so that child can catch up. So in other words, we're accommodating. We're not just saying, no, you can't do this anymore, and can't receive the money. There's a mechanism where the superintendent of public instruction will accommodate that student and that parent. And then if they still can't bring that student up to a reasonable educational level for his age level and grade level, then the superintendent has the authority to say, okay, well, we're going to no longer have this student to be eligible for the ESA dollars. So I ask for your favorable consideration.
Representative Andrew for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I read it, there's a little bit more to this amendment, and one thing that it does is require in the bill, the students have to take a nationally normed achievement exam. And these achievement exams are not just fly-by-night operations that are just everywhere. They are tests that have stood the test of time and have national recognition. This amendment requires these to be further approved by the state superintendent. However, it does not say that she has to approve any of these tests at all. So what the amendment could end up doing, potentially, depending on who holds that office at the time, it could essentially require the YTOP. And that's important because as much as we all hear about how we teach to the test, we also test to the teaching. The exams are based on the curriculum that is being provided. And if you have a student in a classical school or something of that nature, the YTOP is not going, can I say that? Sorry. The state test is not going to be the same, a sufficient measure of that student's achievements.
Speaker Summers for your first time.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. On and against the amendment. If you don't like ESAs, vote against the bill. There's a provision in here for transparency to parents to show how different schools, how they basically on the nationally normed tests, how well they do. But if you're going to get into the individuality, this is not a public school. So if you don't want to spend public money on ESAs, vote against the bill. But I am on and against this provision.
Representative Ottman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Majority something. Whip. Okay, thank you. Just a comment, and I like what the last speaker said, and so I thank you for that. But going along with that testing and stuff, we all know that education is so very important, but we also know that some of these tests are not providing the exact success and, let me see what, direction that we want to go. For example, I'll just give you an example. 2 years ago, we were told that, yes, Wyoming kids are increasing in reading. Well, they were increasing to where they were 54% of proficient. So if we're going to start looking at and testing all of these things on an equal thing, I went with a classical school group over to a city just north of us and went to, an actual court thing. I mean, the schools, as one of the speakers was saying, are not exactly on the same basis, and that's why they're doing this. That's why parents spend the time with it. Public school is different. So what I would just say is that to have these same tests that we're dealing with that are not being successful, it doesn't make sense. So please vote no.
Mr. Majority Something, that is how you shall all refer to me going forward. Representative Provenza, I don't have you here for our first time. We were on our second time. That was Representative Ottman's second time speaking. No one else came to the mic. My mistake, Representative Provenza.
Golly gee, thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Majority Whip. I guess I'm confused. When you ask for government handouts and government welfare, why there aren't requirements to meet what the government wants out of that? So if you're asking again for government handouts, there should be some requirement that you have to perform. And if you can't meet that, then don't ask for government handouts. On and in support of this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Ward for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would this amendment apply to public schools? Do they lose funding if students don't perform? A substantial percentages of students do not perform to grade level. So if we're gonna, and by the way, they receive public funding. On and against this amendment.
Representative Pendergraft for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to push back a little against the idea that this is a government handout. Where does tax money come from? Ultimately, it comes from the taxpayer. And a lot of these folks that are desirous of an ESA simply want to say, why do I pay taxes to support a system that I disagree with? If I want to educate my children in my way, perhaps I could get a portion of that tax money back, my own money, and then do it as I think is appropriate.
Any other member for their first time? Any other member for their first time? Any member for their second time for the sponsor? Seeing none, to the sponsor, Representative Nicholas.
Thank you. And if you go to page 10 of the bill and look at B, it's on line 4. This bill already requires that the ESA student take statewide assessment administered pursuant to 21-2-304 or a nationally normed achievement exam. So the language that talks about that norm testing that the good speaker spoke about is already in the bill. The problem that we have is that we're requiring the test, but you don't do anything with it. I mean, who does it go to? Who's going to review it? Who's going to take care of that child if the parent is not diligent and the program that some online course that she's got her child in is flunking? And there's no recourse. There's nothing we can do. And why in the world would we not put the kids first and not the parent to make sure that that child is getting an adequate, sufficient education so they can read, so they can write, they can do math? There's nothing in here that requires any of these programs to be successful, to be more than 2 hours a day. That's just not in here. So there has to be, this is just a mechanism that says, okay, now we've received the scores that's already required in here. And if it's really bad, then we should be able to contact the parent and say, goodness, little Johnny's not getting all the education he needs. What can we do to help? And we're going to help you however we can. And then after that, if little Johnny still isn't, he's in 5th grade and he's reading at a 1st grade level, he's going to need some help. He's going to need an IEP. He's going to need something in order to help that child. And this is about just making sure that our kids get educated. So on in favor of the amendment.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 5, please say aye. All those opposed say no. Third reading amendment number 5 has not been adopted. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. Less than 32. That amendment is not adopted.
Point of order. It's a majority, so we should make sure that you do have more.
All those opposed, please stand. Thirty-six opposed. As I said, third reading amendment number 5 is not adopted. The next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 6. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would move third reading amendment number 6 to House Bill 166 and ask for your favorable consideration. So, ladies and gentlemen, this just requires the parent of the ESA child to annually report what the actual expenditures are and how much they were spent to make sure that it complies with the qualifying expenses in the bill. Right now, there's simply no reporting requirement in this bill on what the money is being spent on. And it seems to me that as we are the responsible stewards of our tax dollars that are going towards this, we need to know that money is being spent correctly.
Representative Andrew, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When looking at this, Speaker, when looking at this amendment, it helps to understand how a parent receives funds from an ESA. Nobody will just get a pot of money with which they can spend on anything they want if they choose. What happens is that the agency hires a third-party provider who then sets up a system where parents can direct those funds to approved expenses. So things have to be approved beforehand. The only other way they can do it is submit a receipt for a reimbursement of an expense that will then, and a determination will be made at that time. So by the nature of how this ESA program works, the reporting mechanism is built into it because we absolutely know what everything went to, because the parents are directing these funds through the system that has been provided to them.
Representative Clouston, for your first time.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, body. You know, I think I hold the record for the fastest bill ever voted on this House, and I think now I'm going to have the record for the most amendments ever in this House. So I think we'll be at 22 when we're done. I completely agree with Representative who just spoke. The superintendent, she'll have all the information. It's all on a computer. Other states do this. This should not require any extra reporting from the families. That report will all be done by our department that takes care of education. Against the amendment.
Representative Alaman, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If we pass this bill, is that also going to require public schools to do the same? I think if we are going to apply the law equally, that our teachers are going to have to, or our superintendents or whoever is going to have to report every transaction they do. Thank you.
Representative Provenza for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, one of the states that has recently kind of implemented this program, kind of to our southwest, I believe, they have a similar kind of third-party system with vouchers. And you look them up and it's rampant with fraud. So while they use these systems, which we're going to pay a third party, a private entity, to implement this online system to then buy a computer, there's nothing really that's going to go and say, okay, well, I bought a computer for my kid, my $5,000, and then I went and returned it and I got the money. So, I mean, on and in support of the amendment, but the idea that this third-party system is going to save us from fraud, government waste, and abuse is inaccurate.
Anybody else for your first time? Anybody for your second time before the sponsor? Representative Nicholas.
Thank you. So on in favor of the amendment, ladies and gentlemen, it may be, and it's possible, or perhaps even likely, that the superintendent may go to that third-party vendor, and it may be that type of a program. But we don't know, because this bill doesn't require to go through a third-party vendor. That's just the typical practice. So if in fact that is what happens, then we'll have that information at our fingertips, theoretically. But so then what's the problem with putting a provision, an amendment in here that says it will happen? So the vendor has to do it, and basically that information, so we know what it's being spent on. To me, it's pretty simple. So I'm in favor.
All those in favor of third reading of amendment number 6 to House Bill 166 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 6 to House Bill 166 has failed. Division being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 6, please rise. All those opposed, please rise. Thank you. Third reading amendment number 6 has failed, 27 to 33. The next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 7. Representative Nicholas.
Thank you. I would move third reading number 7 for House Bill 166 and ask for your favorable consideration. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is at page 7 of this document. As it's currently written, it says the parents have to apply for the ECA. And so to me, that's problematic, because that means that 2 parents have to sign on it, because it's plural. And so basically this says the custodial parent, so that if you have one parent that wants it and one that does not, typically in a legal setting, it's the custodial parent that has the primary custody of the child, and so that would be the person that could sign on it. So have to be favorable consideration.
Question being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 7 to House Bill 166, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 7 has been adopted.
Now we're going in the right direction, ladies and gentlemen. So I would move third reading number 8.
Representative Nicholas, third reading amendment number 8. Go ahead.
I would move third reading number 8 for House Bill 166 and ask for your favorable consideration. So ladies and gentlemen, this drops the 40 million down to 20 million and of general fund dollars. So I ask for your favorable consideration.
Representative Lawley for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is a good compromise. I've also talked to the superintendent of public instruction who believes that this is, and she's named in the bill, that she's agreeable that the program could be run the first year at this level. So again, I am on and for this amendment.
Representative Clouston for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I've ran all the numbers on this for months and months. This is a reasonable request. I think this program will be very successful at this appropriation. On and for.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time? All right, question having been called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 8 to House Bill 166, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 8 has been adopted. Division being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 8, please stand up. Third reading amendment number 8 has been adopted. We are now ready for third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 166. Representative Brown.
Mr. Speaker, since the body's so ready to vote on this bill and move forward, I respectfully withdraw second reading amendment number 2.
Third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 166 has been withdrawn. Chief, let's see, House Bill 166, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand, Allred, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Berger, Brown, Burkhart, Byron, Chadwick, Chestick, Clouston, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hornock, Jennings, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Locke, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Nemec, Northrup, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Pendergraft, Penn, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Sherwood, Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stiff, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Zwanitzer Dan, Zwanitzer Dave, Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Jennings? Aye. 2 no. Further changes? Closing. Slagle? Aye. 2 no. Further changes? Locke? Aye. 2 no. Further changes? Davis? Allemand, aye to no. Further changes? Further changes? Closing vote? Vote closed. 44 aye, 18 no.
House Bill 166, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 166 has passed the House. The next resolution for our consideration is House Joint Resolution 3. The reading clerk will read the joint resolution.
House Joint Resolution 3, sponsored by Representative Larson, JT. Support for local input and federal rulemaking. A joint resolution in support of meaningful state and local government involvement in drafting proposed federal rules being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
House Joint Resolution 3, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand, Allred, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Berger, Brown, Burkhart, Byron, Chadwick, Chestick, Clauston, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hornock, Jennings, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Locke, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Nemec, Northrup, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Pendergraft, Penn, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Sherwood, Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Zwanitzer Dan, Zwanitzer Dave, Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Oakley? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 58 aye, 4 no.
House Joint Resolution 3, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Joint Resolution 3 has passed the House. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. What's resolved?
Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
Before I just take that motion, and just a quick note, I don't think we're going to go late here, but we want to get a few of these bills out. So you've heard the majority floor leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Boy, that was some enthusiasm. All right, motion is carried. Chairman Western. Yay!
Committee of the whole will come to order. First bill for our consideration is Senate File 15. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 15, sponsored by Transportation. Acceptance of retrocession, federal military installations, and act relating to defense forces and affairs. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate File 15, acceptance of retrocession, federal military installations, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Smith, Wiley. Noes, Representative Stivar. Representative Brown, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 15 do pass. And there are no standing committee amendments, and I will explain the bill quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've got is a bill that this particular body has seen once before, and it really does pretty much only deal with Cheyenne here. And you'll see what it basically boils down to is inside the bill, we talk about an MOU with the executive branch and the city of Cheyenne and F.E. Warren Air Force Base to be able to take over and have prosecutorial authority on certain cases that may exist out on F.E. Warren Air Force Base. And so a lot of you may wonder, why in the world do we need to even bother ourselves with this? Well, underneath current U.S. code, there's a lot of stuff that happens out on base that our federal system is just not equipped to handle. And the two biggest ones are going to be juvenile cases and then family law cases, right? And so if we have a juvenile that, let's say, gets caught graffitiing something out off a base, and they're a student here in town and they belong to a military member, right now, if they're graffitiing something out on base, there's really no penal code for them inside the military system to be prosecuted federally, right? They actually have to be prosecuted within the DA's jurisdiction. But until we actually have what we call here the retrocession, the acceptance of retrocession on federal military installations, until we actually have this in law, our executive branch cannot delegate that authority to our DA. And so our DA has worked hand in hand with our committee. You'll see that this is a committee-sponsored bill over the course of the past year to make sure that this language is right. And our DA here locally is willing to accept this, the case responsibility, and expects, maybe a few cases to come in, nothing major. But as the process works its way through, this is just an opportunity for our DA to actually have the prosecutorial authority if she deems fit or he deems fit, whoever may hold that office, for juvenile cases, especially in the city of Cheyenne and F.E. Warren Air Force Base. With that, Mr. Chairman, I will stand for some questions.
Members, any discussion? Representative Conrad.
Mr. Majority Whip, just a question for the bringer of the bill. Obviously, F.E. Warren has been in place since around 1867. Is there any track record, or more importantly, are there any examples where this bill would have prevented or enabled prosecution? Specifically, or said differently, has there been instances that this bill is required now that's necessary?
Chairman Brown.
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. This absolutely does have cases, and we have had some cases, especially out on base, that this has occurred. I will tell you that this is also something that has worked its way down from the department that oversees defense out in that big 5-sided building out in Washington, D.C. This has been a request from theirs, and they have worked again hand in hand with our county DA to ensure that the language is right. And what you will also notice in this is the fact that we're looking at the partial or full retrocession, right? So it's up to the DA and how that language is drafted with that MOU as to what cases that office may or may not take. But over the past couple of years, there have been a handful of cases that this would have applied to. And it's kind of hamstringed, unfortunately, the federal installation, and they have absolutely no way of handling these cases.
Members, any further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Brown's motion when the Committee of the Whole rise reported do so with the recommendation that Senate File 15 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Senate File 15 is passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 17. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 17, sponsored by Transportation. Plane Coordinate Systems Amendments, an act relating to the Plane Coordinate System. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate File 17, Plane Coordinates System Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Smith, Wiley. Noes, Representative Stivar. Representative Brown, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Brown?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 17 do pass. There are no committee amendments, and I pass the explanation over to the good Vice Chair of Transportation.
Representative O'Hearn.
Mr. Chairman, Senate File 17 is real easy, a simple bill that updates the plane coordinate system to the most current, most accurate plane coordinate system. Land survey accuracy has evolved quite a bit since 1983, which was the last update was standardized. The North American Datum System, and now the Wyoming Plane Coordinate System, is a formal description of the shape of the Earth with an anchor point. I'll summarize the bill. On page 3, line 19, adds changes to the distance to feet and meters, and on page 4, line 18, expresses the vertical element in orthometric height. And for those who are thinking ahead, on page 7, line 2, the description by plane coordinates shall be construed as supplemental to the basic coordinate description of the property. And on line 8, your current land survey shall prevail over the description by the new plane coordinates. Finally, on page 8, line 2, provisions of this chapter shall not be construed to prohibit the use of other datums, reference networks, or other systems. And number 2, require the revision of any survey, deed, or record prepared prior to July 1st. So your land survey is accurate. That's the bill. I'll stand for questions.
Members, any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor of Chairman Brown's motion when the Committee of the Whole rise to report to do so, the recommendation Senate File 17 do pass. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say no. Senate File 17 is passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for consideration is Senate File 2. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 2, sponsored by Management Council, Legislative Budget, an act relating to appropriations for the legislature. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 2 engrossed, Legislative Budget, respectfully report, same back to the House with a recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Swanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Nicholas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move in the Committee of the Whole rise and report. It does so with the recommendation that Senate File 2 do pass. I'll turn the explanation of the bill over to the good representative from Jordan County.
Representative Walters.
Thank you,
I move
Mr.
Standing
Chairman.
Committee 2.
For a presentation of Senate File 2, and I will get to the Standing Committee amendment that the good chairman just moved when we get to that portion of the bill. But this is also known as the Legislative Appropriation Bill. And so at the bottom of page 1, you'll see where we have the staff salaries, legislators' salaries. And remember, this is the 2-year biennial budget, so divide those all in half for the annual basis. Starting on the top of page 2, we discuss legislators in the interim, session staff, employer-paid benefits. Then we get into in-state travel. This is for legislators and staff as we go about our interim committee meetings. Out-of-state travel, again, for legislators and staff as we go on about our meetings as we're members of national organizations and whatnot. Moving on down to the annual dues, you can see the various organizations we pay an annual due to. And the other is for various staff dues, you might say. Then we have registration fees. That's for the conferences any of us as members attend for any of those national organizations that are listed above. We have telecommunications, ETS, that's really for data storage, firewall services, IT security services that ETS provides for us. Moving on to page 3, general administrative support. This, as you can read there, copying, furniture, supplies, contract services, any of that sort of stuff. And then the statute session laws. I think we produce about 550 copies of our session laws and our statutes. The statutes every other year, session laws every year, as we're required to produce those for all sorts of folks throughout the state, the judicial branch, et cetera. So that's the what we consider the above-the-line expenses of the state legislature. Then we move on to section 2, and this is what we would call the below-the-line or other activities going on. In section 2, we have the management or flex authority for management council essentially, and so this just allows them to move funds around a little bit. Section 3, this is for travel authorization and how management council can offer travel authorization for members to travel out of state. Section 4, we just carry it over from annually each year, this section. And this is really used if we have special sessions and things of that sort. So we just sort of have a contingency fund available when we need to do that. And just for your kind of curiosity and information, it costs about $40,000 a day to run a day of special session. Rounded number, but that's kind of in the neighborhood, $35,000 to $40,000. So special session isn't cheap. Moving on to Romanette number 2 on page 5. This is the sale of our legislative laptops. So all of us at the end of this year will, and as we begin the next legislative session, you have the opportunity to buy the current laptop you have. You'll be issued a new one. And so as you purchase those, it goes into this account, is held there, and then that account's utilized to buy the next round of laptops. And moving on to section 5, page 6, this is for our drafting system, the computer system that helps draft all of our bills. Section 6, this is authorization to pay new legislators before they're sworn in. So anybody that's a new legislator goes to, as after many of us were elected between that November election and the first of the year in January when we were all sworn in, we had the opportunity to both attend trainings down here to learn how to be a legislator, learn some of the activities, as well as to attend any interim committee meetings that may still be happening after that November election. And so this allows for those new members to be paid to attend those activities. And then moving on to section 7, page 7, this is in regards to school litigation. And so just carrying that so that we can defend the legislature in those cases and hire counsel if needed. Moving on to section 8, special contingency. This is just anything that may come up that management council sees a need to help with the legislative ongoings. Section 9, this is economic development authorized travel. This allows members of this body to travel out of state and even out of country, whether through a legislatively driven trip or through a trip in which the executive branch invites members of the legislature to participate. Examples of that is the executive branch has invited members of the legislature to travel to Canada at different times to tour some of their large energy industrial facilities to get an idea of things that we could possibly do here in Wyoming to expand our energy economy. And so that's what those expenses are for. And section 10, this is for the State Treasurers Conference. It pays for the attendance and registration for all the members of CAP-FIN as well as the Appropriation Committee's members to attend the State Treasurers Conference. And section 11, this is just furnishings within the legislative portions of the Capitol, you might say, and so making sure that we have the appropriate equipment available and whatnot. Section 12 is for the Interpretive and Wayfinding Committee to make sure that those members get paid that serve on that special select committee. Section 13, this is new for this biennium, the $150,000 for the CSG annual meeting. We have a good representative here in our body who is the president of CSG. Can say it because it's right here and that's what it's titled. And so that conference will be held actually next fall in one of our fair cities here in the great state of Wyoming. And so this is to help cover Wyoming's expense to be the host of that conference. Really an exciting thing to bring all of the various CSG members to Wyoming. And so that's new, something we won't see in every legislative feed bill or appropriations bill, but certainly a good one. And then certainly moving on to section 14, and this is where the standing committee amendment comes in. And the standing committee amendment removes section 14 here on page 12. And this changes it from a simple majority to have management council create task forces versus select committees, and the difference being a select committee is made up of legislative members only. A task force can have legislative and non-legislative members. With this section, it would have created a 2/3 requirement of management council to create those task forces, again, legislative members and non-legislative members. And so the appropriation, or committee number 2 chose to delete that just leave that in the hands of Management Council. They were doing a fine job before and didn't really see a need for those changes. And that, my friends, is the legislative appropriations bill. I would happily accept any questions if there are any, and appreciate your vote on this so that all of our staff and whatnot can, and everything can continue to operate as fine as the well-oiled machine that it is. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, happy for questions.
Any further discussion? Representative Ward, on the amendment?
On the bill,
We are still on Standing Committee Amendment number 1.
I'll save my question.
Any further discussion on Standing Committee Amendment number 1? Question being called. All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1, Senate File 2, please say aye. All those opposed say no. Standing Committee Amendment number 1 is adopted. We are back on the bill. Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. Why is the legislative salary for interim double what legislative salaries are for session? It doesn't make sense to me.
Any further discussion, members? Representative Walters.
Thank you, members. It includes travel, but mainly it's the number of meetings that we attend and the amount of go and touring around the state is my understanding. But I can get a better answer, but that's my understanding on that.
Any further discussion? I believe there is a Committee of the Whole amendment. Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I respectfully withdraw Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File number 2. We heard the reason for the international travel, and that answered my question.
Seeing no objection, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 has been withdrawn. Any further discussion on the bill? Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 and ask for your favorable consideration of Senate File 2. Members, these are 2 of the task forces that Management Council put into effect in 2023. And it's always a little bit difficult when your Management Council puts a task force in and then wants to continue it for a second year. And so we had some discussion at our December meeting that we should at least go before the body with both of these continuances of task forces. And so one did not make it, you'll remember, it was on the list, we just didn't get to it. The other is working its way through the other body. But I figured it best just to put the actual task forces and the appropriations in this bill, and that way we don't have to worry about a Senate file if and when it might come over. So these are we'd be happy to sing the praises about what both of these task forces have done in 2023 and what we hope to do in 2024. Happy to answer any questions on them, but this seems to be the appropriate place to put them instead of having Management Council just do so arbitrarily without a vote of this body. Please please vote in favor. Happy to answer your questions.
Members, any discussion on the amendment? Any discussion on the amendment? Question being called. All those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to Senate File 2, please say aye. All those opposed say no. That amendment is adopted. We are back on the bill. Seeing no further discussion, question on the bill? All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas's motion that when the Committee of the Whole arises report, do so with the recommendation Senate File 2 do pass. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Senate File 2 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 3. The reading clerk will read the bill. Oh, or actually, just real quick, there, reading clerk, I think we've got a privilege of the floor. Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Speaker, or privilege of the floor.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I direct your attention to the North Gallery, where I'd like to introduce to you a student from Moreland High School. Her name is Justice Nilsson, and she's here with her teacher, Pam Greet. Well done.
Welcome, Justice, to the People's House. I promise that we're harmless. Perhaps not. The next bill for consideration is Senate File 3. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 3, sponsored by Labor, State Employee Leave for Volunteer Fire or Volunteer EMS, an act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 3 engrossed, State Employee Leave for Volunteer Fire or Volunteer EMS, respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Ward, Yin, Zwanitzer. Noes, Representative Hornock. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Zwanitzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rise to report or do so, the recommendation on Senate File 3 do pass. I would further move the Standing Committee amendment and turn over both to the good representative who's a district number higher than mine.
Representative Trujillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Explanation of Senate File 03. Do I move the amendment first? I did. Okay. So this bill basically is to help our small communities and our volunteer firefighters. We have a shortage of volunteers in the state, and this would help our community by, let me read this here. Every state officer and employee shall receive up to 24 hours of leave with pay during each calendar year. And the amendment, in the amendment, we are asking to catch the title, delete fire, volunteer EMS to emergency response services, as some of our ambulances, their drivers are contracted, so this would help with that. And and adding training to this, because some of these employees, it would help with their training. And I stand for any questions.
Chairman Washit.
Just a quick question. I think I heard you say that some of these ambulance folks are contractors, and the title of the bill talks about state employees. Is there a disconnect between the title of the bill and expanding it to include contractors?
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think to answer the good question, we do have some what we call AWECs that are at-will employee contracts, but they are still state employees. So this would cover all of the, when you think FTE, general fund state employees, anyone on special revenue, and then anyone who's an AWEC, who we'd also consider our state employees would be eligible for this leave to serve.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Representative Yen? Oh, okay. Seeing no further discussion on the amendment, all those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1, please say aye. All those opposed say no. That amendment is adopted. We are back on the bill. Any further discussion on the bill? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Zwanitzer's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, do so the recommendation that Senate File 3 do pass. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Senate File 3 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 4. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 4, sponsored by Labor, rehiring retired firefighters, continued retirement benefits, an act relating to firemen pensions. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 4, rehiring retired firefighters, continued retirement benefits. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Ward, Yin, Zwanitzer. Noes, Representative Hornock. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman.
Representative Yen.
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill, Senate File number 4 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I will explain the bill. So members, this is one of the other firefighter EMS recruitment tools, essentially, to try to bolster our firefighting employees across the state. So one issue with being able to rehire folks who are retired because there's a situation where the pension can't necessarily allow it without the statute change. So this statute change basically allows it so a firefighter who has retired and is receiving a pension is still able to be rehired and continue working. There's not going to be that many sort of positions that will do this sort of thing. And if you take a look at the fiscal note, it really describes what the effects will be. Essentially, that rehired retiree won't accrue additional service credit, so that won't build up their pension any bigger, but they'll still be able to get their annuity while they are working. However, if they're working in a full-time position, they're still paying that contribution rate towards the pension. And the retirement system basically said that this will essentially make the pension plan neutral if anyone was rehired. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem Stith.
Mr. Chairman, so just a question, because we discussed this last year or the year before, I think. So if I understand it right, it means that if this would mean that a firefighter who's worked for 20 years, if they retire on July the 1st, they wait 30 days, they get rehired on August the 1st, then to the same position, then they'll receive their pay, but they'll also receive essentially 60% of their pay as a retirement benefit. Is that how this works?
Any further discussion? Mr. Minority Floor Leader Yin.
Mr. Chairman, yes, so they would continue receiving the pension which they have contributed to throughout their entire career. What they don't get is any new increase in their pension by continuing to work, while they still have to contribute as a full-time worker towards the pension system, but not getting any increased benefit. The benefit here is that, some retirees might want a sort of desk job while they'll continue contributing to the firefighting system, but they probably won't become a regular firefighter again, because that sort of deal is kind of tough, especially once you're retired.
Members, any further discussion? Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was a no on this bill in committee, not because I don't love firefighters, but we heard as some of the testimony in committee that this would probably rarely happen. And also, this only applies to 2 jurisdictions in Wyoming, that are 2 biggest cities, basically. And those 2 biggest districts do not have a recruitment problem. So really, I didn't know really what this was solving. They don't have a recruitment problem because they're paid, they're full-time staff, they get full benefits, they get full retirement. So essentially, you could have somebody that works for 20 years, retires, comes back to the department, and then is making more money than the bosses and is essentially kind of double dipping type of thing. So anyway, just a little bit of background on that as you get into the bill. But I was a no on this, and we'll see where the bill goes. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Minority Floor Leader Yin.
Mr. Chairman, so what the firefighters came to us and asked was that this again, as it was said many times, it probably won't be used that often, but there are situations where a firefighting division might need someone to step in for a role temporarily because they're a person with a lot of experience and they know the kinds of ins and outs of the department, but probably won't be someone that they need super long term, but is someone that they can call on. They can call on retirees to fill a role, maybe on an interim basis, before they find someone who can do it for the rest of the time. So again, I ask you to vote aye. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion. Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Zwanitzer or Representative Yin's motion, when the committee of the whole rise to report to do so, the recommendation that Senate File 4 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Senate File 4 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 20. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 20, sponsored by corporations. Electricity rates for costs that do not benefit Wyoming. An act relating to public utilities. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 20, Electricity rates for costs that do not benefit Wyoming, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Harrelson, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Excused, Representative Harshman. Representative Olson, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report that I do so with the recommendation that Senate File 20 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I will explain the bill. So,
Chairman Olson, I believe that there is a standing committee amendment.
Is there? Is that right?
I'm looking at one with your name on it.
Oh, yeah. I move adoption of the standing committee amendment. And I'll take up the standing committee amendment first. Well, let me explain the bill, because then you might understand why we did what we did with the standing committee amendment. This, as many of you know, because you heard from your constituents, and you may have even felt it yourself, but there was a particular utility in the western side of the state that had a proposed rate hike on its consumers at 30%. And so when obviously the legislature became very concerned with this, and your Joint Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivision Interim Committee spent the interim trying to see what, if anything, we could do, not to change that existing case, because we couldn't, there was a rate case open and we couldn't impact that existing case. But we wanted to understand what could we do as a legislature to try to curb or mitigate this from happening in the future. So this bill is a product. You're going to see many bills. There's over a half a dozen bills that are going to come out, hopefully, from the Corporations Committee. They're making their way over. They made their way over from the Senate, and they all deal with this rate hike from this one particular utility. And so this is the first of many bills that you're going to see. This bill is very straightforward. What it does is it specifies that costs of interstate electric public utilities that do not benefit Wyoming ratepayers may be excluded from the costs apportioned to Wyoming. So very simply, what does this bill do? It says that Wyoming consumers pay for things that benefit Wyoming, and Wyoming consumers do not pay for things that do not benefit Wyoming. Your commission that oversees public utilities can already make a decision that says that. So what this does is it codifies something that they can already do, but it sends a message from the legislature that that not only can you do this, but we prefer that this is our preferred policy. So we pay for the things that benefit us. We don't pay for the philosophies or policies of other states that don't benefit us. And that's the bill. And I'll take any questions. Oh, the standing committee amendment, let me do that. I forgot about that, but it was an amendment to change the effective date from July 1st to immediately. There's no rulemaking that has to take place from this commission that oversees public utilities, so there's no reason why it shouldn't be effective immediately, especially given the dire situation that we found ourselves in with the 30% rate hike. It would be prudent to make this effective immediately. So, Mr. Chairman, I will take any questions on that standing committee amendment.
Members, any discussion on the amendment? Representative Conrad. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of standing committee amendment number 1 to Senate File 20, please say aye. All those opposed say no. That amendment is adopted. We are back on the bill. I think we've got a committee of the whole amendment. Representative Wiley.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move committee of the whole amendment number 1 to Senate File SF20.
Please proceed.
A description of my amendment that I'm proposing. You know, when I went home and the last time we gavelled out, there were, a few different topics that took up a favorable part of my time in between. Property taxes, parental rights, Rock Springs RMP, and rate hikes. And I told the folks at home, it's not right that other states can burden the ratepayers of Wyoming with their political views or agendas. And I publicly stated, that I will come to Cheyenne and I shall do something. Not may do something, I shall do something. So if you look at this bill, it says, we may not have any of this burden that doesn't benefit Wyoming. Well, if you go down through it, it's a great bill, makes us all feel good. But that's what it is without 2 word changes in this bill. It's just a feel-good bill. So I would propose that we go line 3 and back in further to the bill to line 3 as well, change those mays to shall. And the commission that negotiates for our ratepayers shall know the intent of this body. So I please ask you for favorable consideration for not only my motion, but all the ratepayers at home. And maybe we'll keep some coal plants open with this as well. Because we need to tell California, Washington, and Oregon, they do not get to choose how we generate energy in Wyoming.
Chairman Olson. Seeing no further discussion, with the question being called, all those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. That amendment is adopted. We are back on the bill. Any further discussion on the bill? Seeing no, Representative Conrad.
Mr. Majority Whip, thank you. I'm fully supportive of this bill and the respective amendments as we just heard. My question to the bringer of the bill specifically surrounds this. We, or more importantly, there are many states, obviously 6, that are involved with the multi-state process, or MSP. My question to the bringer of the bill is, how does that impact those who have current contracts with Rocky Mountain Power in this case, or the electrical utility that's bringing forth these raises? The other question I have is, Wyoming's percentage for the multi-state process is 15%. The challenge that I have, or more importantly, the question that I have is, when we look at states that are just to our west who are going to take down 2 coal-fired plants and replace them with nuclear reactors, the cost of that, essentially $1 billion, will be spread throughout the 6 states. Specifically, Wyoming will have 15% of that cost. Additionally, is there any protection for the firewall, more importantly, a firewall that has recently occurred when there's forest fires, actually up in Oregon, where they were found negligent? That, again, utility that's found negligent, that settlement was $90 million. From that settlement, there's another class action suit that talks about 2,500 other properties, which is valued at approximately $1 billion in settlement. So my question to the bringer of the bill, how will does this, more importantly, prevent that sort of thing from occurring, where there exists no firewall to distribute those costs that have incurred at, again, 90 million or 15 or 1 billion, and or the cost to replace coal-fired plants with the construction of $1 billion nuclear reactors? And lastly, as I look at my notes here real quick, there's been a carbon tax placed on Washington State. That cost is now going to be distributed throughout the Rocky Mountain, with the electrical utilities. So does the bill help those states, specifically the 6 states, as more importantly, those in Wyoming, from being protected against the multi-state process at 15%? And we do know that most 80 to 90% of all of the power producer, that power goes out of state. So just a question for education purposes, and more importantly, helping me out to understand the bill.
Any further discussion? Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I would invite the representative from District 19 to go back to his computer and view the hearings over the interim to better understand the bill. I think that will help you, because it's hard for me to convey 6 meetings worth of information in such a short amount of time. So I do really encourage, I know you attended at least one of our meetings, and I really encourage you to do that. Because the other thing I really can't do is, I don't want this bill to be the idea of a fix-all, because it's not. I tried to explain that out the gates, that we have a series of bills that are coming out of our committee. So I think a lot of the questions from the good representative from District 19 will be answered across the time as we introduce these other bills. But, you know, as to, I think the amendment that you just adopted, for the committee of the whole amendment, that you just adopted, that requires the commission that oversees our public utilities to make sure that Wyoming only pays for what benefits us. I think that answers the multi-state protocol question, because the multi-state protocol, if you step back, what the multi-state protocol does is it requires Wyoming to pay for transmission of power to those other states on the West Coast. This bill is very specifically saying, no, unless you can make a finding that benefits Wyoming, then no, we don't have to pay for that. And as to the first question from the representative from District 19, affecting existing cases, I would say that I believe it can affect all of the existing situations, because they could be brought as a challenge, now the word's not escaping me, but as a rate case. If they were brought as a contested rate case, then this law would apply to the findings of the commission that oversees our public utilities. So it's not going to do anything unless there's a challenge. Once there's a challenge, then this law is going to apply to it. So hopefully that makes sense. But I do encourage you to watch for the other bills that are coming out of our committee, and hopefully they address some of your concerns, because I think the basket as a whole tries to really address all the concerns that the multi-state protocol brings into place. And you know, at one point in time, we considered just exiting the multi-state protocol as well. And that's not a bill that you'll have before you, but that would be, I think that would be a permanent solution, maybe possibly, to some of your concerns. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion on the bill? Any further discussion? Question being called? All those in favor of Chairman Olson's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 20 do pass. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Senate File 20 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 30. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 30, sponsored by Judiciary, Influencing Jurors and Witnesses, Judges Amendment, an act relating to crimes and offenses. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 30 engrossed, Influencing Jurors and Witnesses, Judges Amendment, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes, Representative Provenza. Representative Washit, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Washit?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation Senate File 30 do pass, and I further move the adoption of standing committee amendments and turn over the explanation of both to the good representative from District 4.
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to start by just explaining Senate File 30 a little bit, and then as we get kind of a little further into that explanation, I'll bring in that amendment. So Senate File 30, Influencing Jurors and Witnesses, Judge Amendments. This is talking about and addressing an issue that we're finding where people are intimidating or creating issues with in the judicial process with jurors, with judges, with witnesses, to try to change the outcome of a case. Obviously, we don't want to ever put a juror or a witness or a judge into a position or place where they are not able to carry out their duties in a proper manner. And we've seen this come to kind of a head and a little bit of a gap or a lack of enforcement to protect these individuals. So what we do is, obviously, if you look on line 10, page 1, it says influencing, intimidating, or impeding jurors, judges, witnesses, or officers obstructing or impeding justice and the penalties of. The kind of the teeth of it is 14, 15, and 16 on line 1. A person commits a felony punishable by imprisonment for not more than 10 years, a fine of not more than $5,000 or both. And then on the back side, it says it is if by force or threat he attempts to influence, intimidate, and then we're going to read in this amendment, you strike that or, and it would read, intimidate, impede, or retaliate against a juror, judge, witness, or other judicial officers in retaliation to the discharge of his duties. So that's how the amendment would read in. And what this does is it protects, not only would it protect our jurors, our judges, our witnesses, but also any other judicial officers, so magistrates. So we tried to get a blanket that would cover what needed to be covered. And so with that, the addition of the or retaliate against other judicial is the terms that we have, or the verbiage we have in our amendment. And with that, I would ask if there's any questions on the amendment.
Are there any questions on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 30, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Senate Committee Amendment Number 1 is adopted. We are back on the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Please, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you. So this is, it's pretty straightforward, page and a quarter. Really what we're doing is a protection for those in our judicial branch that are either witnesses, jurors, or judicial officers or judges. And this is just to give them that protection that we need to in case someone goes and does something foolish and tries to try change the outcome of a court hearing through illegal means. Thank you very much.
Any discussion? Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted no in committee, and I want to kind of explain why. Part of what this does, this bill, is increases or enhance penalties for intimidating or attempting to influence. And this is at a level of 10-year felony. So this is a very serious sentence, particularly in comparison to aggravated assault and other cases where people are severely injured. Someone who commits those crimes is looking at a very similar sentence. And the other concern that I had is, and granted, there has been an increase of violence or threats of violence against judges. I'm not going to take that away from them. But this is not a protection. This is just after the fact it's happened. These are people that are making threats in the heat of the moment, many times, I'm sure. And we have ways to kind of go after folks if they make threats outside of this. But what you're asking to do, and there were 109 people that threatened judges last year, which is an increase. But you're saying, okay, I'm all right with throwing them in prison for 10 years. So yeah, good little bill with very severe consequences. So I would just think about that. That's what has weighed on my mind. We also have voted down other bills in this body in this year that have tried to also create protective measures for other folks like medical workers, and those bills have not gone through. This is essentially doing something similar.
Any further discussion? Chairman Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the prevention aspect or protection aspect, one of the aspects of protection comes from deterrence. And when you have severe penalties, people tend to pay attention to them. Not everybody, unfortunately, but it certainly is possible that by having this penalty built into this law, and all we're really changing here is the addition of the judges and a little bit of language on the retaliation aspect after the fact. But not a major change, penalties there to protect our judges. And I just ask you to think about a situation where you're in litigation and the judge in your case receives a threat from the other party. Do you want that judge to be just in the ruling, or do you want them to be intimidated by a threat? We want our courts of justice to function without these threats, and we need to send a message to the people who are coming before our judiciary that we're not going to put up with people who threaten our judges. It diminishes the level of justice that we all can receive, and that's why it carries such a severe penalty. Please vote aye.
Any further discussion on the bill? Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're always asked how many times this has happened in the past. The detriment is 10 years, from what I heard from the previous speaker before. I'm just wondering if there's ever been a deterrence where this has happened and we have given somebody 10 years for this. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the bill? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Washington's motion, the committee of the whole rise to report to do so. The recommendation that Senate File 30 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Senate File 30 has passed committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee of the whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries.
The reading clerk will read the committee of the whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 15, do pass. Senate File 17, do pass. Senate File 2, do pass amended. Senate File 3, do pass amended. Senate File 4, do pass. Senate File 20, do pass amended. Senate File 30, do pass amended. Representative Western, Chairman.
Chairman Western.
I move for the adoption of the committee of the whole report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Chairman Western. Messages from the Senate. No messages. Reports from standing committees.
Senate File 5, sponsored by Labor, Organ Transplant Recipient Protection and Act relating to insurance. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 5, Organ Transplant Recipient Protection, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, Hornock, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Ward, Yin, Zawanitzer. Representative Zawanitzer, Chairman. Senate File 35, sponsored by Judiciary, Public Records, DOC Investigations, and Act relating to public records. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 35 engrossed, Public Records, DOC Investigations, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemick, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Representative Washit, Chairman. Senate File 38, sponsored by Management Audit. Financial Reporting Amendments 2, an act relating to financial reporting to the Department of Audit. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 38 engrossed. Financial Reporting Amendments 2. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zawanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Senate File 48, sponsored by Appropriations. Patrol, Warden, and Investigator Retirement Contributions, an act relating to compensation and benefits. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 48, Patrol, Warden, and Investigator Retirement Contributions, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zawanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Senate File 49, sponsored by Appropriations, Judicial Retirement Program Contributions, an act relating to compensation and benefits. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 49 engrossed, Judicial Retirement Programs Contributions, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zawanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Senate File 9, sponsored by Education, Parental Rights in Education, an act relating to education. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 9, engrossed, Parental Rights in Education 1, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Allred, Andrew, Berger, Clauston, Lawley, Northrup. Noes, Representatives Brown, Obermueller, Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman. Senate File 21, sponsored by corporations. Public Utilities Net Power Cost Sharing Ratio, an act relating to public utilities. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 21 engrossed. Public Utilities Net Power Cost Sharing Ratio, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Harrelson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman.
All right, I think that clears the deck. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House stand adjourned until tomorrow, 10 a.m., Tuesday, the 27th day of February, 2024.
Committee announcements. Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources. We don't have any Senate files, but we will be touring the State Museum at 12:30. So if everybody could meet at the State Museum at 12:30, we'll have our tour.
Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker, your Ag Committee will meet at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. We'll work Senate File 12, 13 engrossed, Senate File 14 engrossed, and if we have time, we'll work 65 engrossed as well.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 9, Minerals Business and Economic Development, will meet Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. in Annex Room 5 to consider Senate File 50 and Senate File 66.
Representative Craig, would you come up to the front, please? Chairman Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 1 will meet on Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock in our normal room to hear Senate File 32 and Senate File 34 engrossed.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Appropriations will meet at 8:30. We'll hear Senate File 58, 59, 67, and 70. And that's in 301. If we don't finish those, we'll continue to work at noon, but that will be in room 113.
Vice Chair Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 3 will meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. to hear Senate File 18, Indian Child Welfare Act Safe Haven Amendments, Senate File 37, Indian Child Welfare Act Delinquency Amendments, and Senate File 55, Board of Equalization Questions Before the Board.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 8 has no bills right now, so we will not be meeting tomorrow. However, I just want to remind the entire body, if you do have interim topic requests, please get those in before March 1st, and your committee number 8 will be meeting on those next Thursday.
I think that's it. You heard the majority floor leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow, Tuesday, February 27th, 2024.